Lust is something I've dealt with for most of my life. It's been a constant battle in so many different ways and in so many different areas of my life. But today I really want to focus on my teen years, because in my teen years dealing with lust, I was very alone. I was very isolated dealing with lust. And the thing about dealing with lust is you're only as good as your tools and your strategies and your armor, spiritually speaking. Growing up and the way the church was at the time, the way the Christian culture was at the time, I didn't really have many strategies or weapons or armor figured out. Like, I didn't have any of that. And I don't say this with any like spite in my heart towards the church or towards anybody else for that matter. I actually think the church has improved a lot in dealing with lust and related issues. And the fact that the church is actually like talks about it now. When I was a teenager, it was never even talked about. So obviously anybody dealing with it was going to be very isolated because it wasn't even being talked about. So that's kind of the context, right? I was a teenager. I was struggling. I was kind of isolated because the church wasn't really talking about these issues. And here we are. But now I'm learning things, and I'm learning some truths and some foundational things that would have really helped me 10 or 15 years ago. So again, I'm not saying this spitefully towards the church. I genuinely just want to share this vision so that we can all move forward as Christians and do better in this area. I didn't have many resources in this area as I was struggling with all this, but one resource I did have was this book right here, Every Young Man's Battle. My hand was covering the logo. Every Young Man's Battle. There are a lot of rabbit holes that I could go down when talking about this book, but today I just want to focus on the main beliefs and messages that I learned from this book. And I also understand some people may have different experiences. Some people may have totally not gotten these beliefs in their head from this book. I understand different people have different experiences, but I just want to give you mine. Message number 1. Men are hungry sex monsters. The book kind of makes it out like men are just these really hungry sex monsters and we just have these sex drives that are crazy out of control, but dealing with it for the rest of your life is totally doable, which is kind of contradictory. It's kind of this hopeless theme where it's like, it's impossible, but you could do it. That doesn't leave me feeling very hopeful. And then the other side of this message, how do we deal with it for the rest of our life? The solution that the book offers is that the only way to deal with your crazy, hungry sex drive is to completely starve yourself of sexual material. And whether it's out in the world or in your mind, the only way to deal with these things is to starve yourself. And again, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There is some truth in that. As Christians, we have to deny ourselves. There is very much an element of that. But I think the problem with this book is that it dangerously oversimplifies the truth, which can actually make it untrue or misleading if you think about it. There are 2 main chapters in this book that really stick out in my mind as promoting these messages and these ideas and beliefs. The first one is called Your Sumo Sex Drive, and the other one is called Your Mustang Mind. The chapter about your sumo sex drive talks a lot about that idea of having to starve yourself, and it really promotes that idea of, you're just this hungry sexual monster that you have to starve yourself. Again, that belief, like it compares you to a sumo wrestler in that chapter, and the way to make the sumo wrestler smaller is to starve yourself, which doesn't really it's like the scene from How to Train Your Dragon where Stoic tells Hiccup, like, you need to cut it out with all this.
You need to stop all this.
But you just pointed to all of me.
Yes.
It kind of makes it out like all of us are bad, and the only way to solve the problem is to starve everything about us. Again, there are elements of truth in this. There are elements. Self-denial is such an important thing as a Christian man. But again, it kind of makes it black and white and kind of swings the pendulum all the way to one side. Now, the second chapter is called Your Mustang Mind, and let me just read you a little section of this book, and I think it'll speak for itself. Once you were a proud Mustang, wild and free, sleek and rippling, you ranged the hills and valleys, running and mating where you willed, master of your destiny. God, owner of a large local ranch, noticed you from a distance as he worked his herd. Though you took no notice of him, he loved you and desired to make you his own. He sought you in many ways, but you ran from him again and again. One day he found you trapped in a deep, dark canyon with no way out. With the lariat of salvation, he gently drew you near, and you became one of his own. He desired to break you, that you might be useful to him and bring him further joy. But knowing your natural ways and how you love to run free with the mares, he set a fence around you. This corral was the perimeter of your eyes. It stopped the running and kept you from sniffing the winds and running wildly over the horizon. While the corral stopped the running, it hasn't yet stopped the mating. You mate in your mind through attractions, thoughts, and fantasy, flirting and neighing lustfully at the mares inside or near your corral. You must be broken. So what I really hear is I was once wild and free, and God trapped me. And that could not be further from the truth. And yes, I understand there are elements of being a slave to Christ instead of a slave to sin. I totally get that, but it really makes it sound like once you were in total freedom, now you are in total captivity, but this is the right thing to do. And that's really, it really twists the truth. After I've given the examples of both chapters, I hope you can see what I mean about the oversimplification of the truth. It's not completely wrong, it's not completely false, it's just that it oversimplifies the truth. It makes it sound like you're a hungry sex monster, so the only way to deal with your sex drive is to starve yourself. And it leaves out a lot of the other truths, right? Like, what about the fact that God created us as sexual beings, and that is actually a gift from God, right? Never mind that, right? Never mind looking into the root issues of our problems, right? It's an addiction. It's escape. You're trying to escape from something. Never mind looking into that concept of, wait, I'm trying to escape. What am I escaping from? Never mind looking into your past trauma and understanding the wounds that come from your past trauma and how that influences your behavior now. No, don't talk about any of that. You're a hungry sex monster. There's nothing actually, that's normal, right? It's normal to be a hungry sex monster, but you have to starve yourself because all of you is bad, right? You see how it's oversimplified. Message number 2, no one escapes. This is kind of similar to the last one, but really what I want to focus on is the fact that the book makes it sound like you're going to deal with this for the rest of your life, and it's as simple as that, and no one can escape. And the biggest problem with all of this is that it doesn't give a good vision for what a life of freedom can look like, right? It doesn't give you a good vision of how it looks when you have learned to manage your lust. It's almost like the men writing this book were still trapped and in bondage themselves and using these simple tools themselves, and they're trying to give hope, but really they're making it more hopeless. I actually remember struggling worse after reading this book because it did not offer hope. So yeah, that's the second message, is that no one escapes. I'm just speaking from experience. It is very possible to learn to manage your lust. It's not just possible, it's very attainable and doable to learn to manage your lust and to get to the point where you don't even have to think about it every day. It's not consuming your life even when you're fighting, right? Yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. We'll talk more about that. Message number 3, sex is bad, but you're allowed to do it once you're married. And this isn't just the book, okay? This is all of Christian culture. Christian culture at the time, because I think it was just because it was a little bit black and white, or I don't know, but it made it really sound like sex was bad, especially with a book addressed to single guys. It's like, well, okay, well, sex is bad, but then they're like, yeah, but once you're married, it's fine. And this is, again, way oversimplifying the truth. It's untrue. Sex is not bad. It is created by God. It's a beautiful thing, but they oversimplify it. And because the world treats it as a bad thing, they're like, well, sex is bad, stay away from it. But once you're married, you can do it. The thing about sexuality is that if we don't understand God's design for it, it doesn't matter if we're too conservative with it or too liberal with it. If we don't understand God's design, it's a win for the enemy either way. I hope that kind of makes sense. If you're too conservative and you think that all of sex is bad and that we should just stay away from it, you're walking away from God's design, because God did design you to be a sexual being. He designed it, but it has It has a time, it has a place, it has a purpose. But if you just say it's all bad, you're walking away from his design. And on the flip side, if you say that it's all fine, right? You can do whatever you want and you can be very, very liberal with it, no boundaries, nothing. Well, then you're walking away from God's design because you're taking what he designed to be good and pure and beautiful and you're using it in a sinful way. So both ways walk away from God's design. And that's why I wanted to touch on that. Because again, it wasn't just a book talking about sex is bad, but you can do it when you're married. It was kind of the whole culture at the time. So those are the main three messages that I want to touch on. Aside from those messages though, there are a couple other really big glaring problems with the book in general. And the first one is that it gives a lot of explicit examples of what not to do. I really don't think it's beneficial to give a list of explicit examples of what guys should avoid. This book does a lot of that. You don't need to know an explicit example of something to understand the concept of why something is not a good thing. You can talk about the concept and people can put two and two together. I'm not going to read you the examples because then I would be doing the same thing. But I just wanted to touch on that. That's the main reason I don't recommend this book, is because I think it's kind of counterproductive in that sense. And real quick, I do want to also say there is a girl's version to this book, and I have talked to women who have read this book, and they say that it does the same thing. It gives a lot of explicit examples of what not to do, which is extremely counterproductive. The second problem that I see in the book that isn't necessarily a message or a belief, but it's just a problem, is the main reason that I bring this book up in the first place. Because it wasn't just this book, it was the culture at the time, and that is the bounce your eyes method. So I'm going to go a lot deeper into why that's a problem, but first, I just want to say a couple final thoughts about the book itself before I dive into that. This book was written in 2003, and I say that to give this book some grace. I wasn't that smart in 2003 either. I was only 2 years old. But no, seriously, I do want to give this book some grace. It was written in the middle of the purity culture movement, and I don't want to dig into that right now. Go look it up yourself. But suffice it to say, the culture was really far to one side of the pendulum swing during this time. So it makes sense that we have some black and white messages about things that are very not black and white. It makes sense that they oversimplify some things that are extremely complex and beautiful the way that God designed them. But that's also the reason I bring this up. It's 2026. It's not 2003 anymore. We're 20 years later, right? And for the first time in I don't know how long, I actually see potential for the church to get this right. So I don't recommend these books, but I also acknowledge that this book may have been a stepping stone in the rocky road of the church trying to get this right. And I hope we're in a position now where we can actually get this right more than people in the past. That being said, I want to talk about the bounce your eyes method. Now, I've already talked about it a little bit, and I don't want to beat a dead Mustang. See what I did there? But this is really important for us to understand. Essentially, this idea of bouncing your eyes rests on the belief that you have to remove yourself from the triggers that trigger you to lust. And if you don't, you're lusting. So that's this idea, right? The bounce your eyes method, the idea, that's the idea. And this is also kind of the idea that being exposed to sexual material is lusting, right? That's kind of an idea that goes along with this. Now, this idea can kind of work in other addictions, right? If you struggle with smoking, you've got to physically go to the gas station to get cigarettes. So one could say, well, if you don't get cigarettes and you don't smoke, you don't have a problem with smoking anymore. But lust is far more nuanced and complex. And if we treat it like it's simple, then it's going to beat us, because it's actually, we're playing chess here, folks. We're not playing checkers. Lust is very complex because it's attacking sexuality, which is very complex. I've used the bounce your eyes method. I've used it more loyally than probably a lot of people. And it worked really well until it didn't. A couple of years ago, I moved to the Outer Banks and took a ministry position here as a children's minister. And just living here in the Outer Banks revealed a critical flaw in the bounce your eyes / remove yourself from the source method. First of all, it's not exactly possible Like, sure, it works in January, but in the summertime living here at the beach, it's hard to walk outside without there being lust triggers everywhere. I mean, you drive down the road, there are lust triggers. You walk down the beach, there are definitely lust triggers. But it's not just at the beach. You can't just avoid the beach. It's everywhere, right? It's just kind of part of the beach culture for women to dress more sexually than they do other places. So in order for the bounce your eyes method to work, you either have to stay inside and never leave your home, which is not healthy, or you have to constantly be in a battle when you're outside. You're constantly fighting triggers. You're constantly looking away. You're constantly avoiding lust. And the thing is, that's actually, it sounds a lot like the lifestyle that this book promoted, which is that you're just going to fight with this every day for the rest of your life. It was last summer that the wheels started to turn, and I started to realize this bounce your eyes method is not sustainable. It can work for a time, but it is not sustainable. It turns out lust isn't the only enemy that we're fighting here. As we go from living in sin, where we satisfy the flesh, to living in Christ, where we deny the flesh, there's another enemy that has secretly been living on perfectly healthy. It masks itself as lust, and it actually feeds off of the bounce your eyes method. And the enemy that I'm talking about is objectification. Objectification is essentially viewing someone as an object. And if you think about it, this makes a lot of sense. When you pursue lust, when you lust at a woman, it's easy to view her as a sexual object and nothing else, because that's what you see first. You know, a woman can kind of put her body on display in a sexual way, and you can see her sexuality without knowing her name, where she's from, who her family is, like what she's been through. You can absolutely depersonalize her sexuality from who she is as a whole person. I know this is obvious, but like, women are sexual beings. God created us male and female. We are sexual beings. Women are sexual beings, but they are also so much more than that. So we don't want to reduce women down to just their sexuality. That's objectification. Here's where the problem is though. When you're living in sin, lusting, you're looking at everything around you through a sexual lens. You're looking for it, right? You're looking for things to lust at. When you're bouncing your eyes, well, now you're trying not to lust, but you're still evaluating everything around you for whether or not there's a lust trigger. So if you're looking for lust, you will find it because you're training your brain to see people only as sexual beings and not as whole people. And because of that, the bounce your eyes method can kind of turn into a trap. And that's why I said that objectification can kind of just live on even while you're bouncing your eyes, because it feeds off of this. You're trying not to lust, but you're still looking at everything around you for whether or not you're lusting at it. So you're still looking at women all around you through this sexual lens. And so that's why you feel like it's a constant battle that you can never escape. Once you understand objectification and what it looks like, you start to see it everywhere. Men objectify women all the time, but also sometimes women objectify themselves. And sometimes that's because they've been objectified by men, so that's all they know. But also sometimes women objectify men. Sometimes men objectify themselves. And obviously there are lots of corporations and companies that objectify women to make a profit. It doesn't really matter who's doing the objectification and who's being objectified. It's never really a good thing. I feel like I've heard of cases where, you know, a girl is really pretty and as she's growing up, she's objectified just passively. You know, it's never a big thing, but it's just the little comments. People saying how hot she is, how she's going to grow up and she's going to be gorgeous, or how she's going to grow up and have all the men, right? Those little comments and those little things that people do to her really affect her, because then she grows up and maybe she has internalized that, and now she truly believes that all she is a sexual object. I mean, that kind of stuff happens, and it's heartbreaking. It's tragic. Like, do you have any idea what kind of damage that does to someone emotionally and spiritually, and how much work that's going to take to unlearn and relearn your value? That's a big deal. So objectification goes a lot deeper than just men's lust problem. It's kind of everywhere. Now, I know it might sound obvious, like, duh, don't objectify women. Yeah, we get it, Eli, that's obvious. But I actually think the fact that it's obvious is a good thing, because this is a common enemy we can unite against. Okay, but as obvious as it is, some of you are probably asking, okay, Eli, you're saying I'm not supposed to bounce my eyes. Are you saying I should stare at women's bodies? And no, I am not saying that. But that's a really good question. Like, where does this leave us? How should we handle lust now that we know about objectification? How do we fight lust and objectification at the same time? To do this, I'm going to let God's word do the talking for just a minute. This is 1 Timothy 5, verses 1 and 2. Do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as if he were your father. Treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, and younger women as sisters, with absolute purity. What does it mean to treat women as sisters with absolute purity? Well, let me give you the scenario that kind of made this whole thing click in my brain. Let's say you're going to the beach or the pool or wherever. I don't know if you live near the water or not. Let's say you're going somewhere and your sister shows up and she's wearing something that's a little bit more revealing. How do you treat her? For me, if this was a sister of mine, I definitely wouldn't feel tempted to lust at her or like stare at her body, because that's weird. She's my sister. I would also probably feel a little bit uncomfortable because I know her so well. I would maybe even feel like I'm in the presence of something that only her husband or future husband should see. So that would make me feel a little uncomfortable. But all of that would lead me to respect and honor her by not staring at her body. And I would still hang out with her. I would still talk to her. Like, it's not like just shun her, don't look at her. But I would naturally be led not to lust at her, and I would be led to honor her by not staring at her body. I wonder why it's so easy to not objectify your sister. I don't know, maybe it's because you know her as a whole person and not just a sexual object. It turns out that it's pretty hard to objectify and lust at someone when you can see their soul, when you know them as a whole person. Honestly, I never understood this verse until now. It should be our goal as Christian men to treat women like sisters with honor and respect and purity, seeing them as whole people created in the image of God, just like you were. Okay, so let's get practical. What are some practical things that you can do to help your mind and train yourself not to lust and not to objectify at the same time in a healthy, sustainable way? Well, I've got a couple different strategies for you today. The first strategy is this. When you see something that tempts you to lust, sometimes it's still best to look away. But it's important to realize that just because you see that, just because that exists in front of your eyes, does not mean you've lusted. Don't stare at it, don't fantasize, don't objectify. Just guide your eyes away and tell yourself these words. Think nothing more of it and go about your day. You don't have to act like it didn't happen or like that doesn't exist. Oh no, oh I can't, don't, oh God, I accidentally, have I sinned? You don't have to be like that. It's okay. The second strategy is all about helping you see women as whole people. Women are everywhere, and women are beautiful. God created women to be that way. And again, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes women's sexuality is kind of the first thing you see, but this strategy is all about digging a little bit deeper. When you see a woman that tempts you to lust, look at her face instead of her body. And just remind yourself that that is a woman created in the image of God. And this goes beyond just when you're being tempted. I really think that the best strategy to not lust is to train your mind to see women as whole people everywhere you go. Again, it's kind of hard to lust and objectify at a woman if you can see her soul a little bit. Maybe she doesn't know her true worth. Maybe she's let the culture around her define her worth. And that's tragic. Do you see what happens here? You go from seeing a woman as a sexual object to really seeing the full picture, and to seeing something deeper, and to having compassion instead of lust. That's powerful. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that I wanted to share my vision for the church and how things would look differently if we dealt with lust the way I'm talking about in this video. So here it is. Imagine for a moment what the world would look like, let's just say hypothetically, if all men did not objectify or over-sexualize women. The world would look so, so different. Women would have men all around them treating them with honor and respect. I really, really doubt we would have so many problems if men didn't objectify or over-sexualize women. Because here's the spiral I see our world in. Men objectify and over-sexualize women, and then women realize that the only way to really have value and worth in this world is to objectify and over-sexualize themselves. And when they objectify and over-sexualize themselves, it pulls in more men, and it's a spiral. If men stopped over-sexualizing and objectifying women, women would probably stop objectifying and over-sexualizing themselves. I'm not blaming one gender. I really believe that we're in a downward spiral. Think about how many girls or women that you personally know who have value or self-esteem problems. If you just Google the statistics, it's staggering. Check this out. Quick Google search. I don't know what articles this is coming from, but the AI overview says research indicates that around 80% of women struggle with low self-esteem, which can lead to issues such as anxiety and depression. Additionally, a significant number of young women report dissatisfaction with their bodies, with 78% of girls feeling unhappy with their bodies by age 17. Again, I don't know. I haven't fact-checked this information, but if those statistics are anywhere close to true, that is heartbreaking. And again, I'm not trying to blame one gender. I'm not trying to say that this is all men's fault or this is all women's fault. A lot of people try to do that, and really, I think it misses the point entirely. All I'm suggesting is that reversing that statistic starts with men. I truly believe that part of God's design for us as men is to lead. And I think this is an area where we can lead and have an impact in the world. Women aren't naturally going to start knowing their true worth when the men around them and the culture around them is screaming at them that their whole worth and identity is tied to the way they look. So, I know this is a big vision, but I'm inviting you, one Christian man to another, to take ownership of the fact that you're a man and God created you to lead. And sometimes leadership looks like cleaning up a mess that you didn't create. It starts with you and me, and then it trickles down into our families, starting with our wives. Imagine the impact our wives could have if they know their worth. And they know that, they're more than a sexual outlet in the marriage. Then it trickles into our kids. Then it trickles into our churches and our communities and our schools. And I really, truly believe that this idea, if it does that, it has the potential to change the world. So, let's go start to change the world. And if you support this mission, feel free to give this video a like so it can reach more people, and maybe even share it with someone you know that you think could be blessed by it. Until next time, keep changing the world.